you, Minister Heiliger, for those answers to members of Parliament. I see that already a member has indicated his desire to speak, so I give the floor to MP Lacruz. MP Lacruz, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, Acting Griffier, the Minister and her support staff, my fellow colleagues, Member of Parliament, those watching and listening on all social media. Madam Chair Lady, through you, the question that I asked the Minister was to give me an explanation of what she thinks the cost cuts, what difficulties it brought to the ministry itself. So, for example, we have a cut in marketing and promotion. Which market did we cut, and what effect that will have on our product or bringing tourists to the island? So that was more the question. Also, when it comes to sports tourism, that it was reduced by 45,000, for example. The Heineken Regatta reduced by 190,000. So what effects this had or this will have on the ministry itself? And it was straight across the board with all the cuts that were made, because I also wanted to know if this was a choice of the minister, or this was actually finance that made these cuts and told the minister, hey, this is where we're cutting. I do understand the child allowance and the salaries. That's basically on the amount of people that were hired, and there's not enough time to hire those. But for example, staff bureau, courses and training reduced by 50,000. These are questions that I keep asking. Why? Because if you want to get more income, but you're cutting, then I want to understand where we're cutting and how we're going to make more money if we're still cutting these important parts of the budget. I hope it is clear. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacruz. I don't see any. Yes, I see a finger. I mean, looking for the button, and that is MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Good evening to my fellow colleagues. Good evening to the Minister and her support staff. Minister, based on this budget and the allocation of the funds for GB in the budget, I'd like to know what the rental loss norm would be, because that's your ministry calculates that for the country, for the collective sector. So including that in the budget, what would the rental loss norm be for the collective sector? I forgot the English word, sorry. But I'm pretty sure she knows what I'm talking about. And when last was that calculated, and has that been updated? Because I know CFT asks for it every year, I believe, but every 2 or 3 years. Has that been updated to include the current loan from, we have in the budget now. Minister, thank you. You mentioned that you are working on the policy regarding the lottery booths. I look forward to that, but you didn't answer the question regarding the current state of the lottery booths. So the ones that we have now, what is the legal basis for it? Are they legal? What is every booth that we see on the island? What is the legal status? For example, if I have a Burger King license and I establish a second Burger King, I need a branch license. So every lottery booth, what license do they have to operate? So the person that's in the booth, do they pay as a V? Do they pay taxes? Do they have an AMANZAC, a BV, an NV? Because they collect money, right, and distribute money. So what gives them the legal right to execute this task? In addition to that, I believe you mentioned there are 106 booths. And what I would like to know is how many sale points do they have? So a grocery store, a gas station, how many sale points do they have regarding being able to sell these items? And again, what basis are they allowed to execute this? So if the others don't have a license, and there's one main branch, are they allowed to? Is anyone allowed to sell lottery booths, lottery tickets, or numbers? And yeah, I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. MP Iran, you had something to add? MP Iran, you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question regarding the inspection. So I know the last Minister of TIAT was working on revenue generating schemes, and the dated inspection policy was one of them. We didn't get an answer on that. Is that a plan to continue with your government in terms of the inspection department for vehicles? And yes, for vehicles. And because that answer was not given. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Iran. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon once again to the Minister and her support staff. Minister, I asked a series of lottery booth-related questions to the Finance Minister, and she was very adamant that basically she didn't want to touch that, and you had to answer those questions. So I guess I'll just pose them to you now. As it relates to the question, the answer to the question you gave a while ago, it was more from the vein of piggybacking off of what MP Iran was just explaining. Basically now, if I'm a lottery booth license holder and I have 10 booths, and the person to my right, for example, would have 100 booths, theoretically we're paying the same amount in taxes, right? And my question was more, as it relates to revenue generating ideas, the suggestion of, hey, what is the status or what are the plans when it comes to legislation to tackle that, in the sense of the more lottery booths, more branches you have, the more taxes you pay, the more revenues are generated for government. That was more of what I meant, more branch licenses and not necessarily operation licenses. Maybe I used the wrong term then. So to clear that up, because that also has to do with, again, the difference in lottery booths versus ticket vendors in the various stores and gas stations as such. Next question I had was pertaining to online gambling. Major pet peeve nowadays are all the regulations at the bank. So basically, if you want to open up a bank account, or you even want to submit more than $3,000 or $2,000, you're being asked all these questions, and that has a lot to do with the banking regulations from the FIUC, that St Maarten is on the gray list. And one of the major reasons for that is for the lack of legislation that falls under the online gambling sector. So my question would be, what are the plans when it comes to legislation of that category? As well as it pertains to the airport, did the airport commence the repayment of the loan granted by government in 2018 and 2019 as yet? If not, why not? And if yes, can you please indicate, can the minister indicate how much has been recouped to date? And my final question would be more related to the true port fees, because there was a elaborate explanation in Parliament a couple of weeks back as it pertains to the explanation of the fuel clause. And one of the things, one of the boosdoeners, as they would say in Dutch, of the fuel clause is the true port fee. To my knowledge, that has never really been explained. Basically, what does the cost comprised of? What is it comprised of? How is that calculated? The fees that goes to the government from the cost, what is the percentage? What percentage? So basically, what is the pie chart of the true port fees? What percentage goes to government? What percentage goes to any other entity? And who are these entities as it pertains to the true port fee? And those would be my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. MP Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the question regarding the rental loss norm just now was basically the interest expense of the collective sector. So I said it in Dutch, but on the interest expense of the collective sector. And the collective sector threshold cannot exceed a certain limit. So first of all, I would like to know what our limit is, and by us taking on this loan, would it then exceed this limit?
That's it, MP Irian. Then I continue with MP Doran.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you to the Minister for the answers provided thus far. I would like to just go back on one of the points that was brought forward. I don't believe that the Minister answered the question completely, so I'll just add some content to it. With respect to the causeway, in the permit agreement to build the causeway, there was a clause in there that the port would contribute to the repairs of the entire Union Road. That was never done. About 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, we repaired Union Road. When I say we, I'm talking about the government repaired Union Road with government funds. And then a discussion started for the port to repair Juancho Gilskin Boulevard, which they're busy with now, which is the road leading to the port. My question is, are these funds coming from the port through you, Madam Chair, or are these funds coming from government coffers, may it be CapEx or the regular road repair project? So I hope that clears up the question. The next question I have, Madam Chair, through you, is that I heard a number being mentioned in terms of what is still owed with respect to the causeway loan that the port is paying. I would like to know how much has the causeway cost the people of St. Maarten, because say once it to the port took it out, it is a government-owned company, so the people are paying for it from 2014 to now, and how much is exactly owed. I heard a lot of figures being thrown around, and I didn't really get a clear answer, so I would like to make that question very clear, because by extension, the throughput fees, the container fees, the cost of living, and every other fee has increased since then. So leave that out. I would just like to know how much has the causeway cost the people of St. Maarten from 2014 to 2024. I know that the port was busy exploring different means to try to sell it because, of course, it wasn't serving its purpose in terms of revenue generating that the idea, the initial plan was. So I'd just like some clarity on that before I move on into the next questions. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Doran. MP York, you have a follow-up or another question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was one question that I forgot to pose. Prior to a couple months ago, there was I don't want to call it a campaign promise, but for the lack of a better term, a campaign promise made by the Minister of TIAT and the Minister of ECIS as it pertains to the cooling system / airco for the Lebby Scott Sports Auditorium. So I would like to know what the status on that promise is and bringing that to fruition, because as you know, there's a lot of activities being done right now at the Lebby Scott Sports Auditorium, and it's very hot. So that promise will come true it will be very advantageous for those who attend these events. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. MP Otley, you have the floor.